Good evening, everyone. It is taking a little bit longer to clear security, so we're going to still let a few people come in, but we're going to stick to the debate schedule because there are so many broadcast people out here. My name is Sharon Schulman. I have the honor of being your moderator for the evening, and I also would like to get everyone's attention, so that I'd like to begin the evening by calling up one of Stockton's most distinctive alumni, President Harvey Kesselman, for a few welcoming remarks.
Thank you, and welcome to Stockton University in the heart of southern New Jersey. The Stockton community is both proud and honored to have been selected by the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission to host their first set of gubernatorial primary debates. The principle of civic engagement has always been a foundational component of Stockton's core values, and we strive to foster a sense of civic accountability and responsibility within our students. In fact, the concept of engagement is one of the university's 4 strategic themes, which is fully intertwined within the learning experiences of our students both on and off campus. Moreover, Stockton's William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy embraces this theme and promotes civic life as a much-needed voice for South Jersey. In preparation for this evening's debates, we asked our students, faculty, staff, and general public to help us develop tonight's questions. The questions presented represent the thoughts of many constituents, and we look forward to hearing the candidates provide their points of view. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the entire Stockton community, it is our pleasure to share our beautiful 2,000-acre main campus with so many of New Jersey's future and current leaders. Likewise, in 4 years, we hope to see you all back in our new Atlantic City branch campus, which will be opening in fall 2018. Now, I'll turn the podium back to your moderator, Sharon Schulman, and all of the candidates. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
And now it's time to move on to the debates. Our center's namesake, Ambassador William J. Hughes, spent his entire public career dedicated to the concept of civility in government and politics. In fact, the ambassador was out here earlier this evening but couldn't stay for the whole debate. While I know many of you in the audience have your own favorite candidate, I ask you to respect the dialogue that we are creating tonight so that voters throughout the state can hear the opinions and ideas of each of our candidates and then make an informed voting decision. We are asking you that you refrain from comments, applause, and any other interruption until the end of each debate. And then, all the participants deserve recognition for their efforts, and I hope you will applaud. And please, no photographs during the debates. It will interfere with the various broadcasts that are going on. Lastly, no recording of any or all of the debates. The complete debate will reside on the Stockton website for your reference and among other places so that you can get anything that you need off of there at a later date. Briefly, this is a 1-hour Republican candidate debate, the first debate. There will then be a short intermission, and because some media are broadcasting live, we ask that you be back in your seats at 7:50 p.m., and we will begin again promptly at 8 p.m. with a Democratic candidate debate. As President Kesselman mentioned, I just want to reinforce that questions for this debate were culled from those submitted by faculty, students, and the general public. A random coin toss or a drawing of lots determined who's going first and who's opening. In the second debate, after the opening, the candidates will then go alphabetically. The rule of the debate is for each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement. This will be followed by a question, and the addressed candidate will give a 2-minute response. The remaining candidate or candidates will have 1-minute rebuttals. The candidate who opens will be the first to close with a 1-minute statement. If you look over here to the timer, you'll see that there is a time clock so the candidate can actually watch the time. There is also a signal that will be held up 15 seconds before the end of the time to give the candidates fair warning when their time is completed. And then there's me. I'm going to politely interrupt the candidates if indeed they should go over their time allocation and tell them that they have to stop. So now let me bring in the candidates for the first debate, and I will introduce them to you. Thank you. To my left are Assemblyman Jack Citarelli and Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno. There was a coin toss, and I'm going to use first names to keep everything equalized here, so please forgive me for not being proper with titles, but we're just going to try and keep everything level like this. I am going to ask Jack Citarelli if he would please go first with a 1-minute opening statement. Time clock is right there.
We're on the brink, and you all know the crisis. They ruin our economy and punish New Jerseyans every single day. Unfair school funding, the highest property taxes, billions in debt, 11 credit downgrades, worst business climate in the nation. The result, more and more people leaving New Jersey. Kim Guadagno and the Christie administration have 7+ years to fix New Jersey. They just haven't been able to get it done. My name is Jack Citarelli. I'm a married father of 4, a grandson of immigrants, a lifelong resident of this state. I'm an MBA CPA, an entrepreneur, a 2-time successful Main Street business owner. I've actually created jobs, met payroll, and made the tough decisions. In declaring my candidacy, I put forth for voters what I've always done for my investors and my employees and my customers, a very, very detailed plan. I look forward to discussing that plan tonight. The differences between me and the Lieutenant Governor are stark, so let us have this debate.
Thank you. Right on time. Thank you very much. Kim?
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. Thank you, Stockton University, for having us all tonight. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm going to start by telling you first who I am and then why I want to be your governor. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I'm a former sheriff. I'm a working mother with 3 sons. And for the last 7.5 years, I have been a job creator in the state of New Jersey. Let's never forget where we were 8 years ago with 9.8% unemployment. Today, we're at 4.2% unemployment. As I worked to create jobs, 300,000 of them in the state of New Jersey over the last 7.5 years, I've talked to tens of thousands of people. And while they can now find jobs in New Jersey, the problem is they can't afford to live here any longer. So I'm running for governor because we need to cut property taxes in New Jersey so people can afford to live here again. We need to audit Trenton to be sure that the money that we spend and send to Trenton gets to where it's supposed to be. And we need to create opportunity for families, opportunities for all of our families. To put it simply, we need to make New Jersey better, we need to make it more affordable, and that's why I'm running for governor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question, and it gets up to a 2-minute response, goes to Jack Citarelli. The question is, New Jersey's economic recovery has lagged behind the rest of the nation's. What is your plan to foster economic growth?
So I've put forth a 5-point plan that addresses the crises that ruin our economy and, again, make New Jersey unaffordable for all people. It's a very, very specific plan. It's a very, very detailed plan. It addresses, first and foremost, the property tax crisis, because whether you are in business as an owner or a renter, the property tax crisis affects you. As an individual, whether you're an owner or a renter, the property tax crisis affects you. Any gubernatorial candidate that speaks to solving the property tax crisis without first addressing our school funding is either oblivious or being disingenuous. You cannot solve the property tax crisis in this state without first addressing the inequitable distribution of K-12 funding. The fact of the matter is, tonight we are in Galloway. A $400,000 house in this town pays more in property taxes than an $800,000 house in Jersey City. The fact of the matter is that middle-class people in this community are paying through the nose for pre-K, and yet millionaires in Hoboken get to go to pre-K for free. This isn't fair. It's blatantly flawed. And I think it's unconstitutional, quite frankly. It violates the Equal Benefit Clause of the state constitution. We need a new distribution of K-12 funding in this state. And my 5-point plan addresses it by getting rid of adjustment aid, which acts as a hold harmless clause for communities. No government subsidy was ever meant to be aid in perpetuity. A town's state aid should go down as its ability to pay goes up. That's the case in places, for example, like Jersey City and Hoboken. We need to redefine local fair share. We need to redefine the weighted averages that we spend on a cost per pupil basis. And we need to stop with the abuses of pilots. Pilots, a payment in lieu of taxes, are a very, very powerful tool for encouraging economic development. But we can't have mayors and councils in places like Jersey City negotiating a pilot and then sending 0 to the school district. That only perpetuates their dependency on state aid.
Thank you. Kim Guadano, please, 1 minute.
Well, thank you. First, Jack Ciattarelli's 5-point plan fails for 600 million different reasons. That's the cost of his plan. I know one thing for sure. Having created 326,000 jobs in the state of New Jersey, I have never seen a job that was created with a tax. I have never seen a community that was kept together with the taxes. I think that $600 million is enough reason to not vote for Jack Ciattarelli. We simply can't afford a plan that includes 2 additional tax brackets, that includes taxes on the most taxed people in the state of New Jersey, taxes that will not immediately help those who are who need the most right now. I presented a circuit breaker plan that will help those who are in need of making payments for their property taxes now, not in 2 or 3 years when Jack tries to get his school funding formula through this legislature.
Thank you. Question number 2, and Kim Guadano, you get the question first, and you get the 2 minutes this time. Are you satisfied that the 2% cap on local spending has done enough to address high property taxes? And if not, what more would you do?
Yeah. The answer is quite simply no. I'm not the least bit satisfied at the 2% cap. So thank you for asking the question. Anybody who is paying the highest property taxes in this country knows that the 2% cap, while it was effective in slowing the rate of increase of property taxes, they know it's not working. People have gotten around the 2% cap. There's been too many loopholes in it. That's why I presented a 2-fold attack on the highest property taxes in this state. The first is to help the people that need the help most. Who are those people? Our senior citizens, our people who are living paycheck to paycheck, our children that are millennials that are living in our homes and can't afford the property taxes that we have to pay. We need to help those people now. Then we need to propose a school funding formula that's going to provide a thorough and efficient education to everyone in New Jersey, not just those in Hoboken and Jersey City, but those in places like Phillipsburg. You know today's plan isn't working. You know it because this is what happened in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, just in the last 30 years. In Phillipsburg, our high school students were learning algebra in trailer parks. And they were learning algebra in trailer parks at the same time Neptune Township had AstroTurf on their football fields and a state-of-the-art aquatic center. We need a new school funding formula, and we need it now too. The problem with the school funding formula is going to take too long. Those senior citizens I talked about, those people living paycheck to paycheck, we need to help. And those millennials who are going to move out of this state, if we don't implement the circuit breaker plan that I have proposed now, are going to leave. We don't have the time to change the school funding formula and still help those people.
Thank you. Jack Ciattarelli, would you like to give us a 1-minute rebuttal?
The 2% cap is only controlling a cost that is already way too high, and you will never lower that cost without reforming the school funding formula. The Lieutenant Governor doesn't like to talk about the school funding formula because she doesn't have a solution for it. We need to address the school funding formula. With respect to the 600 million reasons, it's obvious the Lieutenant Governor does not understand what a tax restructuring is. She does not understand my 5-point plan. I can recommend a good CPA to her to help explain it to her, but I need to tell you, my plan does not raise anyone's overall tax bill. It lowers everyone's. It doesn't increase anybody's overall tax bill. It lowers everyone's overall tax bill in this state and creates an economy that will grow and more opportunities for everyone. Lieutenant Governor is also famous for saying she never met a tax that created a job, but if you take a look at her record in Monmouth Beach, what you'll see is a record of having increased taxes. As for her circuit breaker, I believe it is irresponsible. It is dependent on false savings from state audits and phantom revenues.
Thank you. This next question comes from a Stockton staff person. The state pension fund has been raided by both Democratic and Republican governors. What plan do you have to address the shortfall in the fund? The first response goes to Jack Ciattarelli.
Like school funding, this is another area that the Lieutenant Governor never speaks to with any degree of specificity. I refuse to go back to the taxpayers of this state for another penny to make the pension system solvent. We can make the pension system solvent with a number of reforms. As a CPA, I've done pension and profit sharing plan accounting. As an employer, I have a pension plan. There are a number of things we need to do. In fact, they were all in the Byrne-Healy Blue Ribbon Report. And we have to do such things as this. All those that are employed in the public sector for less than 10 years need to go into a cash balance plan. All new hires need to go into a 401k. And all current and future retirees whose pension plus Social Security, and don't forget, 1/2 of the Social Security was paid for by the taxpayer employer. All current and future retirees whose pension plus Social Security is more than $50,000 will, on a sliding scale, begin to contribute toward their own post-retirement health care benefit. Now, the state hasn't made the full pension payment, but there's a number of reasons why. It's because it's paying for the post-retirement health care benefit for hundreds of thousands of employees whose out-of-pocket expense is zero. We have to deal with the reality that the post-retirement health care benefit has tripled in cost over the past 12 years, and that people are living into their 80s and 90s. My plan is very, very fair in making sure that the pension trust stays solvent. Moody's and Standard & Poor's says it goes broke in 2027. Tragedy of all tragedies would be in January of 2027, 800,000 retirees not getting their pension check. There's a way to solve this. My plan is very, very specific. It is point 3 in my 5-point plan. And along with that, when it comes to public workers, benefits reforms, that includes stopping people getting a check upon retirement for unused sick and vacation time. It will become use it, lose it under Governor Cettarelli.
Thank you. Kim Guadagno, would you give us a 1-minute rebuttal, please?
Well, thank you. This is because this is where we agree on how to fix the pension plan. You know, Republicans don't always have to disagree on everything. We all agree that the Byrne plan is a plan that can be implemented in New Jersey if we just sit down and start talking to each other. Yeah, I was the sheriff of Monmouth County. I had 8 labor unions, and I can tell you that every time I yelled at a labor union, every time I yelled at a police officer, every time I yelled at someone who held a gun, they went into the corner and they never came out of that corner. And that's the problem with what's going on right now. We need to admit that we have a problem. We need to sit down across the table from the people that will lose their pensions if nothing's done about it. And we need to negotiate. That's the way we fix this pension. And I agree with Jack Cettarelli on that issue. The Byrne Commission plan is a good plan, one that should be implemented now. But what we have to do is make sure that we negotiate it. We cannot dictate to the unions how they want their pensions to be handled.
Thank you. We're going to change the topics a little bit for you for a few minutes. And the first question will go to Kim Guadagno for 2 minutes. What are your short-term and long-term plans to mitigate the effects of climate change and to make New Jersey more resilient to climate change?
Well, as the lieutenant governor who lived through Sandy, I have some very firm ideas about climate change. First, we have to admit what we cannot deny, and that human factors do play a significant role in what we're seeing in the state of New Jersey. I am not a climate denier. I have seen the devastation that Sandy brought to the people of the state of New Jersey. I live at the Jersey Shore. Both homes on each side of me were devastated by the storm and are still in the process of reconstruction. So we need to be more resilient. We need to admit that there is climate change. We need to go back into RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that the governor took us out of. We need to look at renewables. I have solar panels on my house and I haven't paid an electric bill in 5 years. We need to be more responsive to our environment. And oh, by the way, let me add one last thing, because I'm not only the lieutenant governor, but I'm the Secretary of State. And I run the Division of Travel and Tourism. It's a $42 billion industry. It employs 500,000 people in the state of New Jersey. We can't afford not to have clean air, clean water, a decent environmental program, and one that encourages people to come and visit this state. I've seen it up close and firsthand, and I know that if we do more in terms of keeping our environment clean, our streets, environment and our water clean and fresh, then we will be able to attract more people to New Jersey, put them back to work, and continue to grow the economy the way we have grown it in the last 7.5 years.
Thank you. Jack Chitterelli, would you like to do a 1-minute rebuttal, please?
We should all celebrate as Americans the unprecedented era of natural gas discovery, extraction. It's creating a very natural evolution from coal to oil to natural gas. When I was a Somerset County freeholder, we created the first Energy Council to advise the freeholders on energy policy. The chairperson was one of the most preeminent environmental engineers in the state, and he would often remind me, it's great to be on the cutting edge, but do not be on the bleeding edge. Technology and the markets will drive what it is that we use for renewable energy sources in years to come. We do not want to rush this and in turn waste taxpayer dollars. And so let me say this with regard to the Lieutenant Governor's position to enter RGGI, which is a cap and trade proposal. We should only be addressing energy policy on a nationwide basis, not on a state or regional basis. The fact that Pennsylvania is not in RGGI puts us at a competitive disadvantage. This is not the way to go with regard to energy policy.
Thank you very much. This next question was brought up a lot of times, and the responses we got to this one seems to be a big concern to a lot of people. So I'd like to start with Jack Chitterelli. Do you think the state's school funding formula needs to be changed? And if so, what would you do to change it?
So thank you very much. This is point one in my 5-point plan, because the number one issue in this state is property taxes. And let me be repetitive. You cannot solve the property tax crisis until you solve the school funding crisis. And it is in crisis. I think examples are powerful. A $400,000 house in Galloway is paying more in property taxes than an $800,000 house in Jersey City. Middle-class people in Galloway are paying through the nose for pre-K, and yet everyone in Hoboken, including affluent people, get to send their children to pre-K for free. Every city should have its aid reduced as its ability to pay increases. I say this, Jersey City and Hoboken are perfect examples of communities that have revitalized, and because they have a greater ability to pay their own way for their schools. In the vast majority of our school districts in this state, the local levy is anywhere from 70 to 80% of the school budget. 70 to 80%. 70 to 80 cents on the dollar. In Jersey City, 20 cents on the dollar. In Newark, 10 cents on the dollar. Camden, 2 cents on the dollar. We need a more equitable distribution of the $10 billion that we use to support K through 12 funding in this state. It is long overdue. We have had 40 years of Abbott-like school funding, and there are a great many loopholes in the current law that are being exploited. Pilots is another example. Jersey City continues to use payments in lieu of taxes to keep properties off the tax rolls and prevent them from contributing toward the school district. They are actually increasing their dependency on state aid. They do not have a skin in the game. It is long overdue. And the one last point I will make is this. It is long overdue for another conversation. It does not matter how much we spend per pupil. If mom and dad and custodians are not doing their job, it will not matter.
Thank you.
And that is not just an urban issue, that is a societal issue.
Thank you. Kim Guadagno, could you talk to us about the state school funding formula, please, for 1 minute?
Thank you. I have talked to tens of thousands of people in the state of New Jersey, and we have two problems when it comes to the school funding formula. First, it's 30 years old, and it's going to take a lot of negotiation with the legislature. We need 41 votes, 21 votes, and 1 vote, and then you got to go to the Supreme Court and get that extra 4 votes in order to pass a school funding formula that's going to help the people lower their property taxes, which is why I came up with a short-term funding formula called the circuit breaker, which would help those people that are about to lose their homes because they pay the highest property taxes in this country. I don't know how many of you know, but in New Jersey alone, we have the highest foreclosure rate in the country. We have 1 million people who go to bed at night hungry. 1 out of every 5 of those people are children. That's totally unacceptable in New Jersey. We need to help those people, and we need to help those people now. That's my circuit breaker plan. I urge you to go look at kim4nj.com. And then we need to fix the school funding formula by sitting down with both sides of the aisle and coming up with a formula that reflects today's current needs.
Thank you very much. Here's a yes or no question that I'd like your explanation and reasoning for why you say so. And we will start with Kim Guadano, and the question is, should New Jersey allow offshore wind turbines or not? And please explain your reasoning.
Briefly, let me first say that we do have in New Jersey leases to provide for offshore turbines or windmills. And we've been trying very hard for the last 7.5 years to find an entity that is in a position to actually build in a way that's acceptable to the people of the state of New Jersey. Like I said already, we have a tourism industry that's $42 billion. It employs 500,000 people every year. We can't afford to adversely impact our industry. I've seen it grow too fast, too far, even in the face of Sandy, to go backwards. But having said that, you know, wind, solar, renewables, nuclear power plants, we need to rely on those. New Jersey's businesses take 55% of their energy from outside of this state and bring it into New Jersey. We need to find a better way to make it more affordable for those businesses to buy their energy, and wind turbines is one of them. Wind turbines offshore, done in the proper way with the proper financing, could provide us with the energy that we need as we go offline with Oyster Creek, or as we hopefully begin to build out our energy infrastructure. So I believe that not only will the wind turbines provide a source of energy that we hadn't had before, it's certainly a renewable, so it will help the environment. We can do it in a way that is friendly to the tourism industry in New Jersey. I live at the Jersey Shore. I know what those turbines will do. And there are people interested in New Jersey right now, interested in bringing their companies to New Jersey right now, so we could create new innovative jobs. We could be the first offshore eastern wind turbine producer from soup to nuts, meaning we could create thousands of jobs.
Thank you. Jack?
The answer is no. The Jersey Shore is one of our most precious resources, if not our most precious, and the last thing we need is offshore drilling or offshore wind turbines. A lot of people don't realize how high maintenance wind turbines are. I believe this is another one of those examples where we're possibly on the bleeding edge instead of on the cutting edge. We've got clean natural gas that is now being used, and we have 50% of our electricity in this state that's provided by zero emissions nuclear generators that are very, very important to the South Jersey economy. So again, I think that we want to look to renewable energies as these technologies become more productive and much more cost efficient and less maintenance intensive. Let's be careful not to use tax dollars. I just want to revisit the Lieutenant Governor's comment about the circuit breaker. It is disingenuous to suggest that this is immediate relief. She has readily admitted that she needs to do state audits to hopefully discover $250 million in savings and then phantom revenues of another $1 billion to pay for it. It's not immediate.
Thank you very much. Let's stay with the environment for a little bit more, please. And Jack Citarelli, you'll go first with a 2-minute response. This one was also important to many people. Clean drinking water is crucial to New Jersey's economic future and to the health of our families. What are your plans to protect drinking water sources in the Highlands and in the Pinelands?
So I really believe that the natural resource that will be under the greatest stress in the 21st century will be water. It's our most precious resource, and we need to do everything possible to protect it. Our water infrastructure here in New Jersey, like other places around the nation, is in total disrepair. It's a crisis. We have 100-year-old wooden and concrete pipes delivering water here in New Jersey. We've heard of stories of lead in our schools. This is something that we need to address. And what I will do in the first months of my administration is convene a panel. I'm normally not an advocate for blue ribbon panels because many times here in New Jersey, we know exactly what needs to be done. We don't need to discuss it further. But in this particular case, I think we could benefit from a blue ribbon panel that assesses just how bad, how emergent our need is with regard to water infrastructure and how best to solve it. I do think this provides a very special opportunity, a unique opportunity for public-private partnerships, to partner with the private sector to work with us to come up with solutions on how to improve our water infrastructure system. So I do think that's very important. The second part of your question dealt with?
What are your plans to protect drinking water sources in the Highlands and in the Pinelands?
The Highlands and the Pinelands are two very, very precious resources, and quite frankly, I'm a person that wants to work with industry and with policymakers to find ways to transport the natural gas that we're discovering. As I said, this is an unprecedented era of discovery and extraction. The challenge is, how do you transport natural gas? We have to do pipelines in the right kind of way. I do not believe that pipelines belong in places like the Highlands and the Pinelands, and most New Jerseyans agree. These are two of our most precious resources, and we should not be placing pipelines in those areas.
Please hold your applause. Thank you. Kim Guadagno, would
I don't
you
know,
like
I
to
think
just-
applause on that one might be worthwhile. I
know, but we're
You know,
going to
there's
hold.
sometimes you just can't resist. And so for the Pinelands, to answer your question, in terms of pipelines, if we're talking about pipelines, you know it's a balance between the environment itself, the jobs that are created by the pipelines. I talked to Local 400 the other day, and I said to them, because they would be beneficiaries of a new pipeline down in South Jersey. And I talked to them, I said, you know what we need, and you're right about blue ribbon panels, but we need a sane way of making sure that pipelines are put in the right place, in the right way, and it needs to be an overarching, evidence, objective-based program so that we stop having the battles over pipelines and instead get the water and the other benefits that come from it, like jobs. And I want to get back to the circuit breaker for just a second. You know, the circuit breaker that we have provides benefits to 1 to 1.5 million people. Like I said, they are the most vulnerable people in the state of New Jersey today. That 1 to 1.5 billion people represents about $1 billion worth of money out of the account, which I'm not a CPA, I'm just a lawyer, could be about 4% of a $35 billion budget.
Thank you. Next question, please. And Kim Guadagno, you go first on this one for 2 minutes. If the Congress and President succeed in repealing Obamacare, what steps would you take, if any, to protect New Jersey residents who depend on the health care program?
Well, let's hope that that doesn't happen. And I will relate one conversation I had with a congressman on the day he was on his way to the inaugural. And the conversation went really quite simple. Simply like this. It was, what do you plan on doing with the Affordable Care Act when you get to Congress on the first day after the president is sworn in? And he said, well, we plan on defunding it. And I said, well, let me tell you what happens to the people of the state of New Jersey who need the funding the most on the day that you defund the Affordable Care Act. 530,000 people lose insurance coverage. They lose insurance coverage, they lose their choice of doctors, they lose coverage for their ongoing and pre-existing needs, and they lose the comfort of knowing that instead of going to an emergency room, they can go to a doctor of their choice. And when that happens in New Jersey, a second thing also happens. And I also told the congressman this. I said, our hospitals, who we've lowered the charity care on in response to the ACA, will actually fall on top of each other. Why do I mean that? Because we haven't increased charity care at a time when we will have an influx of 500 million people into our hospitals who need help. So I believe we need to continue the fight. I know there's still a lot of unanswered questions about where it will go. I know and I hope that the Senate will take up some of the issues on Obamacare or Affordable Care Act. I believe it's a bad business plan. It was slowly going broke, but there's got to be a way to fix it where the people of New Jersey are not harmed. And as the plan stands now, as I read it coming out of Congress, and again, it's still got to go to the Senate. As I read it now, it's a disaster, and we need to fix it.
Thank you very much. Jack Chitterelli, please, 1 minute response.
Yep. The fifth point in my 5-point plan deals with what I believe is a dysfunctional relationship between the executive branch and our New Jersey congressional delegation. As governor, I will be sure to sit down at least 4 times a year with both U.S. senators and all 12 congresspeople to advocate for the state of New Jersey. We are dead last in the nation if you compare the amount of federal income taxes we all send to Washington compared to what we get back. That's unacceptable. We have another unacceptable situation right now, and that has to do with how the impact of this ACA bill may impact the Medicaid population. 1 in 7 people in New Jersey are working poor, dependent upon Medicaid for health care. And so I'm going to reserve judgment until we begin to see what crystallizes and what begins to come out of the Senate. But our New Jersey congressional delegation, in close partnership with the governor, needs to advocate for the right kind of coverage for our Medicaid population. Because the Lieutenant Governor brought up the circuit breaker once again, let me tell you another limitation of it. It stratifies the middle class. When a teacher who's married to a police person won't qualify for a tax refund under her circuit
you.
breaker, we shouldn't be stratifying the middle class.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next question, please, and this goes to you, Jack Chitterelli, first. What is your stand on protecting immigrants in New Jersey, and would you break from federal policies to protect them?
So there are two types of immigrants. There are legal immigrants and there are undocumented immigrants. And I believe, quite frankly, what we've seen here in New Jersey over the past year with 13 communities declaring themselves sanctuary cities is the worst possible policy at the worst possible time. I think we should all be supporting our president during this age of terrorism to do everything possible to protect the homeland. I actually believe that declaring oneself a sanctuary city or a sanctuary county, that this could encourage illegal immigration. If somebody is thinking about crossing the border illegally into the United States, they might say to themselves, where shall I go? Well, let me go to New Jersey. They have sanctuary cities there. Again, I believe this to be the worst possible policy at the worst possible time. Having said that, we do need an immigration policy for legal immigration. Here in New Jersey, for example, do you know how hard it is to grow an economy when your population is stagnant and getting older? We're a nation of immigrants, and we should be encouraging legal immigration, welcoming people into this country, and achieving their American dream by climbing the ladder. That's how you grow a nation, in every way possible. It's also how we need to grow the economy here in New Jersey. So there are two types of immigration. We know what they are: legal immigration and illegal immigration. I have been very, very outspoken on the fact that sanctuary city declarations I don't think are in the best interest of New Jersey or any community. And by the way, the Democratic proposal in the legislature that if the President and the Congress were to withhold funding, federal funding, from those communities that declared themselves sanctuary cities, that the state of New Jersey would reimburse them, I have two questions. One, where do you get that money? And two, is that fair to the other 552 towns?
Thank you very much. Kim Guadagno, would you like to respond for a minute?
Thank you. A couple of things. First, we shouldn't be that surprised about the president's orders. He campaigned on it. And I'm not surprised that he passed the executive orders that he did. What I am surprised about is how they were executed and how they were done so quickly in such a bad way that it scared so many people to react the way they have, which is with sanctuary cities. And in New Jersey, some of our friends on a stage later on tonight have said they want the whole state to be a sanctuary state. I think that would be a disaster. Again, this is where Jack and I agree. I think it would be a disaster. I'm a former sheriff in Monmouth County. I ran the jail, a 1,300-bed facility, and it shocked me, quite frankly, to know that you could commit a crime in Monmouth County, and even though you were an undocumented or even an illegal immigrant, you could be released out into the public without having anyone run a warrant for your background when it came to your status. And I think that is offensive. I don't think that should happen. If you commit a crime in New Jersey, you should go to jail, and especially if you've committed a crime as an illegal immigrant.
Thank you very much. This next question is from a Lawrenceville resident. How would you meet New Jersey's critical infrastructure needs? The first response goes to Kim Guadagno for 2 minutes.
Well, let me start off by saying that the gas tax was not the way I would have met the need. My opponent tonight, Jack, was in favor of the gas tax in 2012 and 2013, and I think it was only after he decided to run for governor that he opposed the gas tax. When I had an opportunity to oppose the gas tax, I did it loudly, and then I worked very hard to make sure that the ballot question that was partnered with the gas tax lost. Unfortunately, we weren't successful in that, because the problem with the gas tax we have today is as follows. There is something called a panel of four. Those of you that voted for the ballot question thought, well, all of the money was going to be designated to a particular need when it came to infrastructure. So you would think that you would have a gas tax that would be spent almost $2 billion a year on bridges that needed to be done, or roads that needed to be fixed, or even rail lines that needed to be built. And you would think that that would be done in an objective way because it's such an important part of our economy and our lives. The problem is that there's a panel of four. I call it the panel of politics, or the panel of, or the four horsemen of the apocalypse, because four people will be making the decision as to what infrastructure projects get done now with your 23-cent gas tax raise. And that is someone appointed by the governor, someone appointed by the president of the Senate, someone appointed by the Speaker of the House, and the DOT commissioner himself. Those four people will be the friendliest people. They will be what I like to call them the boss of the bossy. The bosses get bossier because people will be making decisions not based on evidence-based objective reviews, but instead based on where they would like to see
Thank you.
the transportation infrastructure grow.
Thank you very much. Jack Citarelli?
When I arrived in the legislature in 2012, everyone knew that there was a crisis in July of 2016. Everyone saw the iceberg sitting out there because the debt on the Transportation Trust Fund would adjust. And what I suggested as a potential solution is for New Jersey to do what Pennsylvania has done for years, to index its gas tax for inflation so that it goes up 1 to 2 pennies a year, as opposed to a 23-cent overnight 170% increase. There's a bit of a hypocritical element in the lieutenant governor's position. While I was standing up on the floor of the assembly advocating against that gas tax deal because it wasn't fair, particularly to the working class and the working poor, the lieutenant governor sat by silently. She never said a word all during the raging debate. It wasn't until after the whole deal was done that I voted no on that she went on radio and talked about her position suddenly on the gas tax. To date, she still has not provided an alternative to replenish the Transportation Trust Fund. It's hypocritical, and it's not leadership.
Thank you very much. I'm going to change the subject a little bit, and this question is from a Stockton graduate student. Do you support expansion of medical marijuana and legalizing marijuana for recreational use? The question goes to Jack Citarelli first.
I support the expansion of medical marijuana in any and all cases that the medical profession feels reasonable, sound, and appropriate. I can tell you as a cancer survivor, my pain never got to that threshold. But being at the clinic, I saw people who did suffer from a certain kind of pain and could not be properly addressed. So as long as the medical profession feels that there's an appropriate role for medical marijuana in the treatment of pain, I support the medical profession and how it should be used for medicinal purposes. I support the decriminalization of marijuana for recreational use possession. Let us remember here, in the United States, we have, I believe, 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we're incarcerating people who really are not a threat to society, who are either addicted to drugs or had a recreational use possession of things like marijuana. We need to change that. I am not for an outright legalization. I will tell you as an entrepreneur, I'm all for being a vanguard and an early adopter. But I do believe that when it comes to legalization, we should take a wait-and-see approach to see how things go in Colorado. I'm not somebody, just because that we have deficits in Trenton, that is rushing to always introduce the newest thing because of the tax revenue that will produce. If that's the case, we begin to get on a slippery slope of discussing a whole lot of other things that we should legalize because of the revenue that it would produce. So to be clear, I am for the expansion of medicinal marijuana wherever the medical profession feels it's appropriate for the treatment of pain. I am for the decriminalization of marijuana in the cases of recreational use possession, but I am not yet for the outright legalization of marijuana.
Thank you very much. Kim Guadagno?
I agree with the Assemblyman 100% that we should not be raising taxes for any reason whatsoever, especially just to legalize marijuana just for the sole purpose of raising revenue. I don't think we should be raising taxes at any point, and that's why I don't understand why Jack would support a $600 million increase in taxes. Having said all that, I have a 16-year-old son who has to make a decision about whether or not, how he's going to handle this legalization issue. And it really comes up like this: Mom, it's legal every place else. Why can't it be legal in New Jersey? Especially because my son went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado. He's very familiar with the edibles and the issues that raises. I agree. We should do medical marijuana. I believe that we should review some of the rules that belong to medical marijuana. I believe that veterans should have access to medical marijuana. It should be a streamlined process. They shouldn't have to go through all of the other drugs before they get to medical marijuana. I think children, in the appropriate cases, should have access to medical marijuana. I also believe that we should have better access to...
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oops.
Yep.
Sorry.
We'll go on to the next question, please. And this one does start with Kim Guadagno, and it's for 2 minutes. And thank you for reminding me about the time, Jack. Stockton Polling Institute polls.
Good, Jack. I was just getting started.
Yeah, I missed it. Stockton Polling Institute polls consistently show that New Jersey voters want compromise to resolve issues over partisan politics. How would you work with the other party to move forward on issues?
Let me quickly finish that last part, since it is my time, and it is my 2 minutes. So let me take 2 seconds to say also, we do have a big problem with legalizing marijuana, and that is that the Attorney General of the United States has said that he would not accept that. And so, as a former federal prosecutor, I think we would have some real problems in New Jersey if we did legalize it, and I think we should consider that seriously before we talk for any reason for legalizing it. Decriminalization, though, is actually possible, at least on the state level, not certainly on the federal level, at least with this Attorney General. Having said that, I've completely lost the question. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding. For the last 7.5 years, I've worked really very hard to reach across the aisle. I've worked with a group called the Red Tape Commission. I have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 2 Assembly members, and 2 senators. And we've never once yelled at each other. We've never once screamed with each other. We've disagreed politely and respectfully and thoughtfully. And as a result, we've decreased the number of regulations that impact our ability to bring businesses to New Jersey by 60%. That's the same kind of government I would bring, and that's the same kind of governor I would be. We've all seen a lot of yelling and screaming, and we know that hasn't solved a lot of the world's problems. I find, and it's been my experience in the last 7.5 years, that you get more done if you don't care who gets the credit. And that's the way I would be the governor of the state of New Jersey.
No, please don't. Please don't. Thank you. Jack Ciattarelli, would you please answer that? How voters would want compromise to resolve issues over partisanship?
Of the 7 times that I've won election, 2 times at the local level, twice at the freeholder level, and now 3 times in District 16. And by the way, I've term limited myself each time, never taken the health benefits, and as a freeholder, I never took the salary. Each one of those 7 elections has been in jurisdictions where Democrats outnumber Republicans. If you take a look at my voting record, I think you'll see that I'm true to my Republican principles of self-reliance, free enterprise, small government, and lower taxes, but I'm not rigid in my ideology. I'm really a problem solver at heart. And my relationship with those on the other side of the aisle, even when we vehemently disagreed, is a healthy one. I'm about solving the state of New Jersey, and it will take some compromise. So again, when you take a look at my record, I think that you see somebody who is willing to compromise but not sacrifice their principles. As long as the Lieutenant Governor is going to continue to suggest that my 5-point plan raises taxes, I'm going to continue to suggest that she needs a better CPA because she's getting the wrong advice. She's also said that she'll never support a tax increase for any reason, but that's pandering of the worst kind.
Thank you very much. This question comes from a Stockton professor. It goes to Jack Ciattarelli first. What is your stance on casinos in North Jersey, and how would that affect South Jersey if they are approved?
I don't think few people have been as good a friend to Atlantic City as Jack Ciattarelli has. I voted no on the ballot measure going on the ballot as a referendum. Once it was on the ballot as a referendum, I advocated for its defeat. I spoke out very loudly and clearly that I supported a municipal bankruptcy for Atlantic City, that was what was in the best interest of Atlantic City, not a state takeover. We can't get our own house in order in Trenton. How are we supposed to do it for another town? I also thought that a municipal bankruptcy would remove all politics. Let a bankruptcy court judge who appoints a monitor take care of Atlantic City and remove the politics. I've also spoken out loudly and clearly on the pilots. I've come out loudly and clearly in support of Atlantic County in terms of how the pilot proceeds are distributed. And Chris Brown, who is a hero to this community in terms of how he's advocated for Atlantic City, I'm pretty much in lockstep with him all along the way. What I have said is that once Atlantic City has gone through its right sizing and is on its way to not being a gaming destination, but really a destination in many other respects, and it is doing extremely well. If there are casinos to the west, to the north, and to the east, that it's a discussion that we should possibly have. But let us not forget, gaming in North Jersey was a ballot measure supported by the administration that Kim Guadagno is part of. And I venture to guess, because she constantly talks about how often in her 7+ years that she's gone around to business organizations, that somewhere along the line she never came out in opposition to North Jersey casinos. There should not be North Jersey casinos unless there are some very, very perfect circumstances in that it does not harm Atlantic City, particularly in the short term. My position on this has been very clear.
Thank you. Kim Guadagno?
Very briefly, I want to respond to the comment that I didn't say anything about ballot casinos. People should understand that the lieutenant governor is elected the lieutenant governor, not the governor of the state of New Jersey. And I think that most people do. And most people understand that when a lieutenant has an objection about what's going on in the state of New Jersey, all they have to do is walk down the hall and complain about it. I have done that on more than one occasion, and then the governor makes the call. That's our Constitution. I've never seen Jack Ciattarelli in Chris Christie's office. I've never seen him raise a complaint to the governor of the state of New Jersey directly. When it comes to casinos, I have every confidence that with the Grow New Jersey tax credits that are provided to Atlantic City, that Atlantic City is on its way back. People used to say Camden County couldn't come back, and now you can't buy a piece of property there. I am absolutely positive that Atlantic City is moving in the right direction and is going to be the great city at the water that it has always been in the past. I do want to add one last thing, and that is bankruptcy would be a disaster, not just for Atlantic City, but for all of the other municipalities in the state of New Jersey. Thank you.
All right, this is a follow-up question to what you were just discussing, so you will have time to say more on this if you'd like, and it goes to Kim Guadagno first. So what role do you envision for the state, if any, in Atlantic City?
Well, as I finished up, and you're right, I should have waited for the next question. As I finished up, bankruptcy in Atlantic City would have a snowball effect, hurting all of the rest of the municipalities, and quite frankly, hurting the ability of the state of New Jersey to borrow money. I thought it would be a huge and an awful slippery slope for all of us. I think Atlantic City has right-sized. I think we have seen the pain of the casinos moving out. I am glad to see that the casinos are finally making money as the result of internet gambling, and I believe they will right-size. It's the same. They're in exactly the same position that they were that Las Vegas was years ago, when Las Vegas was 70% casinos and 30% other. They had to right-size, and they have gone the other direction. Now they have ratables that can support their economy, and they also have casinos. I think the same thing is happening right now in Atlantic City. I have no doubt that Atlantic City has finished its right-sizing and is well on its way, as you could see by the opening of the Hard Rock Cafe and the investment of $300 million into the Hard Rock Cafe. They're well on their way to starting to come back from the brink of bankruptcy where they were.
Thank you very much. Jack Ciattarelli?
Before I get to it, let me just address the fact that I'm a citizen first. And when I think my governor and my president have gotten it wrong, I think I have a responsibility to speak up. One, as a citizen. Two, because I represent 250,000 people in District 16. No Republican in this state has been more critical of the governor than Jack Ciattarelli, and that was long before he ever declared for governor. And I never had to say that I had to walk down the hall and ask for permission before I could disagree with the governor, as you have said. As governor, here's what I will do in January 2017. I wasn't in favor of a state takeover. I preferred a municipal bankruptcy, but by January 2017, we will be close to or more than a year into a state takeover. We will have to take inventory and see exactly where it is that we are and decide how it is we need to go forward. But I will tell you this, as an MBA CPA, we need a new model for the gaming casino industry. We should not be taxing revenues. Casinos should be paying tax on the bottom line like all businesses.
Thank you very much. Next question, and we'll start with Jack Chitterelli. What do you plan to do as governor to improve public transportation within New Jersey, not just in and out of New York City?
Well, with the gas tax proposal that passed, which I voted no on because it was a bad deal for New Jersey and Trenton at its worst, we do have $2 billion a year in funds now available for infrastructure. And we need to decide how best to prioritize those monies because infrastructure is the lifeblood to our economy. This is a sprawl state, so it's very, very, very dependent upon infrastructure. Let me say this, however. We are at a crisis of dependability, reliability, and confidence with New Jersey Transit. I think it is totally unfair, considering the fare increases that those riders have experienced over the past 4 to 5 years, that they're getting on the train in the morning not worried if they're going to get to work on time and worried if they might even be coming home alive. I mean, that's not to be melodramatic. If you talk to commuters, that's the way they feel. I think that what we have to have is an immediate reprioritization of the $2 billion in Transportation Trust Fund monies that are available and decide how best to deploy them to take care of the New Jersey transit issue first. I'm not suggesting that if there are bridges and tunnels in other places of the state that are in total disrepair, that people are in jeopardy. That should be addressed. But we do need to have an evaluation and a total reprioritization. I also believe what we need is a different type of setup, a different framework for our state agencies. I'd like to think of myself as a chief executive officer, and when I look at state government, I see an organization that desperately needs reorganization. New Jersey Transit, DOT, motor vehicles should all be under the same roof. That would be greater for accountability, greater for transparency. I think it would also create the opportunity for a more fiscally sustainable model. Motor vehicles generates $1.5 billion a year in fees. Can we somehow create a model whereby the fees generated by transit, DOT, and motor vehicles make it more self-sustaining and more transparent, as opposed to those monies ending up in the black hole known as the general fund?
Thank you very much. Kim?
Thank you. Just very briefly back to the other question. I think the voters have a right to know that the Assemblyman's attempt to distance himself from the governor is disingenuous at best. I mean, he voted for the governor twice in 2009 and again in 2013, and he was even on the governor's presidential leadership team. So to try to distance himself right now is simply pandering, to use Jack's words. And then in terms of the trains, you know, I took the 546 from Little Silver to Newark for 12 years. I know what it's like to get on a train and need it to get to work on time. I know what it's when I had to meet a judge and try a case, and I know what it means if you don't get your train home on time when you can't meet the babysitter, and the babysitter is saying, I'm leaving or I'm going to charge you more. So the one thing the governor of the state of New Jersey has to be responsible for is making sure the trains run on time. When I'm the governor, I will audit Trenton, and as part of that audit, we will make sure that the money that is being spent on transit is actually being spent on transit.
Thank you very much. We're going to start with Kim Guadagno for this question. Can you tell us what your policy is toward collective bargaining, and what kind of relationship would you seek with public unions in the state?
We touched on that a little earlier. I don't believe yelling and screaming and shouting at anybody gets anything done. I was the sheriff in Monmouth County. I had 8 labor unions at a time when we had a 10% layoff. I had to riff 65 professional law enforcement officers. I looked them in the face and I took their guns and I took their badges, and there was no worse day in my life than that day, because I knew that I wasn't only hurting them and their professions, but I was hurting and destroying, in many cases, their families. I think when it comes to collective bargaining, management has to act like management, labor has to act like labor. They go in a room and they negotiate fairly, openly, and honestly across the table. Yelling and screaming isn't going to get anybody anywhere. Doing it in public is certainly not going to get anywhere, which is why when I got a chance, even though the NJEA had already endorsed one of our Democrat opponents, I decided to screen anyway, because I want to work with the NJEA. I want to make sure the NJEA understands that I don't want to tell them how to run their pensions. I don't want to tell them how to negotiate their contracts. All I want to do is sit down and have a fair, open, honest, adult conversation with them, which I believe we can do, and I believe we should do. In fact, I believe we must do.
Thank you. Jack?
Before I address that, I hope the Lieutenant Governor is not suggesting I should have voted for John Corzine or Barbara Bono. The fact of the matter is that the notion of the governor of New Jersey becoming the president of the United States only meant good things for New Jersey, and so the governor had my support. When he canceled his campaign after New Hampshire, I was the one that called on him to resign if he wasn't going to come home and do his job as governor, because he was going to be monopolized being a surrogate for Donald Trump. And getting back to the gas tax, too, when we talk about being disingenuous, you have actually endorsed Republican candidates for office this year who voted yes on the gas tax. With regard to collective bargaining, my father was in a union. Collective bargaining has its place. Let me tell you something else that has its place: fairness. What we have right now is not fair. The post-retirement health care benefit for public workers is a perfect example of a totally unfair policy. Accrued sick time and vacation time, and allowing you to get a boat check because over 33 years you never had a single day vacation. That's not fair. It doesn't need to be collectively bargained. It needs to stop.
Thank you very much. Next question, we'll start with Jack Ciattarelli. Governor Christie cut millions of dollars from women's health centers. What would your priorities be regarding women's health, and what programs would you support or oppose?
I say this, and I'm not sharing news that anyone is not familiar with. We exist in a time when our challenges exceed our resources, and not by a little, by a lot. This table before me right here, 2 or 3 of us can stand on it, and it will remain standing. If 10 of us try to stand on it, it will collapse. And that's where we are today in society, particularly with our governments. I say this: it is time for a total reevaluation of all programs. Everything will be on the table as governor. Any dedicated tax or fee that's not being used for its intended purpose will either be targeted toward its intended purpose, or I will eliminate it and reduce costs for citizens throughout this state. With regard to women's health care, this is an important priority. Sure it is. My daughter is here tonight. Not all women might have the same advantages that my daughter has. Our nucleus is in place, and she has access to high-quality care. I realize not all people may be in that boat, but with a limited pot of money to go around, are we taking care of homeless veterans? Are we taking care of drug addicts who don't have a bed? Are we taking care of the peak demand for mental health services in our community? I say this: it is time for a total reevaluation and reprioritization of the monies that we currently have to work with, because I refuse to go back to the people of this state to increase taxes to make more of these programs possible. So this is what we really need to do: a total reevaluation and reprioritization of all these programs, which puts all of them on the table. I think that's the fair and appropriate thing to do. Something like Planned Parenthood has been around for years, but what is a new phenomenon in our community are homeless veterans, drug addicts without beds to be treated, mental health, people who need mental health services where they can't be found. It is time for a reevaluation.
Thank you. Kim Guadagno?
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like Jack agrees that we need to audit Trenton, and I'm a big fan of that. I think we need to start at the top and work all around all 25 different departments and make sure that we're getting our money's worth, because you know what? I don't believe we are, and even more importantly, I don't believe you think we are. And that's why we need to nominate and elect an independent attorney general, so that you know that you're getting your money's worth, and that there's somebody out there who represents just you when it comes to Trenton and the money that you send to Trenton. To answer your question about women's health care, obviously, as a woman, there's nothing more important to me. I can tell you one small story when I was sent to talk to a group of women, business women, about how we were going to help them expand their business and create their business and expand their business in New Jersey. And I looked through the briefing that they gave me, and nowhere in the briefing did anybody tell me what we were going to do about child care credits. I said, you know, if we don't have affordable and reliable child care in New Jersey, we're simply not going to have women entrepreneurs in New Jersey.
Thank you very much. This will be your last question before we go to the close. I know you're having a good time, but we're going to bring it to an end. This is from a recent Stockton graduate. Funding for the arts from the federal government is at risk of ending. How would your administration support funding for the arts? And Jack Ciattarelli goes first. Did I do that wrong? Kim Guadagno goes first.
Well, you know, when we created the office of Lieutenant Governor, it really was kind of unique, and I will get to the point in just a second, but the Lieutenant Governor had no office, no staff, no salary, nor portfolio, certainly no pension. And so we decided to put the office of Lieutenant Governor together with the Secretary of State's office. So as I sit here today, I am the Lieutenant Governor and the Secretary of State, and when the governor's out of state, the women in the room will appreciate this, I'm the acting governor, the Lieutenant Governor, the 33rd Secretary of State, and I get one salary. And that's salary I get because I am the Secretary of State. I run the Council on the Arts, History, Culture, Travel, and Tourism, the Board of Elections, and about 40 or 50 other entities like AmeriCorps and the Office of Volunteerism, the Hispanic Center, the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives. So when it comes to Council on the Arts, nobody's more familiar the value of art to not only our culture, of course, and our quality of life. I don't think you could put a price tag on that. But I do know that for every nickel that you put into the arts in New Jersey, you get $1 back in revenue, whether it be because you have an arts center in the middle of your town and it creates restaurants and other activities for you to do, or whether it just enhances a child's ability to think straight and to think better and to do math better. So I know the value of arts, and I have, for the last 7.5 years, encouraged the Council of the Arts to get out and to create jobs in New Jersey and enhance our quality of life. So we're lucky in New Jersey because of Governor Tom Kean. In New Jersey, because of Tom Kean, the arts is not at risk. There is a hotel-motel tax paid for from people out of the state that goes to support the Council on the Arts, and only a small percentage of what we pay comes from the National Endowments of the Arts. I was happy to see that the President was not going to cut that money from our budget.
Thank you very much. And Jack Chitterelli?
Before I get to my rebuttal on the arts, listen, as a CPA, I love audits, believe me. But there's something we need desperately more than audits in state government. We need a downsizing. The fourth point in my 5-point plan deals with downsizing state government by 10%, modernizing it, streamlining it, and making it way more efficient for all citizens and businesses to engage with it. With regard to an elected AG, I can't think of a worse proposal. The last thing that we need is an AG raising money, running like a politician, being beholden to party bosses, and for Republicans, we know how difficult it is to win statewide race. We are outnumbered by 800,000 Democrats. An elected AG could not be a worse proposal in my humble opinion. With regard to the arts, they are important to our culture and they're very important to our vitality. I would say this, our challenges are greater than our resources. We need to be innovative and resourceful in how we fund very important endeavors like the arts.
Thank you both very much. We're now going to go to closing statements, 1 minute each. Jack Chitterelli, you'll start again. You open, so you close. Go ahead.
Come November, after 8 years of Christie Cadagno, the only way Republicans win is with a new message, a new messenger, and a new direction. We can blame the Democratic majority, the legislative map, the Supreme Court. I refuse to. Taxpayers do not want to hear excuses. They do not want to hear excuses. They do not want to hear promises of property tax relief based on false savings and phantom revenues. They want leadership. They need a plan. The fact is, I have a plan. Kim does not. My plan addresses the crises that ruin our economy, make the middle class poorer, and make the American dream all but impossible here in New Jersey. Governing requires leadership. Leadership marked by a command of the issues, courage, and vision. In these respects, the differences between a lieutenant governor and me are stark. They're very stark. There's another big difference between the two of us. I'm the only one that can beat Phil Murphy. So Republicans have a choice. I ask that they vote for Jack Chitterelli on June 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kim?
Thank you. Thank you. In closing, I want to thank the university again. I want to speak to all of the taxpayers that are listening tonight, and I want to especially speak to those taxpayers who are struggling to make their property tax payment this year. I am the only candidate on this stage who has made property taxes and the actual lowering of your property taxes the #1 issue for my administration. I am the only candidate on this stage who has proposed a plan, the circuit breaker, to help people in New Jersey who need the help the most now. I am the only person on this stage who has promised not to increase the taxes on the most taxed people in this country. My opponent, not only Jack, but others that might be on the stage tonight, have all said they are going to increase your taxes. We can't afford it any longer. The difference couldn't be more clear. We do agree on that. The difference is I will not raise your taxes. I will lower your property taxes. I know that by fighting to make New Jersey affordable again, that's what you want to see in your governor. We can do better. We must do better.
And now, would you all thank everybody? We'll start again the second debate. No, a little bit before, but I gotta get my speech. Got it? They were hysterical. On about one. Good evening. Can I get everyone to please take their seat and be quiet? We're going to kick off a few different things here, and then we will get to let the TVs do their job. So let me first tell you that I'm Sharon Schulman. I am the Executive Director of the William J. Hughes Center, and I have the honor of being your moderator for the evening. And that since I do now have your attention, and most of you were not in the first debate, I'd like to begin the evening by calling up one of Stockton University's most distinctive alumni, President Harvey Kesselman, for a few welcoming remarks.
Thank you, and welcome to Stockton University in the heart of Southern New Jersey. The Stockton community is both proud and honored to have been selected by the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission to host their first set of gubernatorial primary debates. The principle of civic engagement has always been a foundational component of Stockton's core values, and we strive to foster a sense of civic accountability and responsibility within our students. In fact, the concept of engagement is one of the university's 4 strategic themes, which is fully intertwined with the learning experience of our students both on and off campus. Moreover, Stockton's William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy embraces this theme and promotes civic life as a much-needed voice for South Jersey. In preparation for this evening's debates, we asked our students, faculty, staff, and general public to help us develop tonight's questions. The questions presented represent the thoughts of many constituents, and we look forward to hearing the candidates provide their points of view. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the entire Stockton community, it is our pleasure to share our beautiful 2,000-acre main campus with so many of New Jersey's future and current leaders. Likewise, in 4 years, we hope to see you all back in our new Atlantic City branch campus opening in fall 2018. Now I'll turn the podium back to your moderator, Sharon Schulman, and all the candidates. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
So we now will move on to the Democratic debate. And let me just start by saying our center's namesake, Ambassador William J. Hughes, who was here earlier this evening, spent his entire public career dedicated to the concept of civility in government and politics. And while I know many of you in the audience have your own favorite candidate, I ask that you respect the dialogue we are creating tonight so that voters throughout the state can hear the opinions and ideas of each of our candidates and then make an informed voting decision. So as a reminder, I ask you that you refrain from comments, applause, and any other interruption until the end of the debate. And then all participants deserve recognition for their efforts. And please, no photographs or recording during the debates. It will interfere with the various broadcasts. The complete debates will reside on our Stockton website for your reference as we go forward. Briefly, this is a 1-hour Democratic candidate debate. A drawing of lots determine who will open, and the candidates will then go alphabetically. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement. This will be followed by a question, and the addressed candidate will give up to a 2-minute response. The remaining candidates will have 1-minute rebuttals. The candidate who opens first will be the first to close with a 1-minute statement. And if you look over here, there's a timer, an LED timer, and you'll see that that clock so the candidates is positioned so the candidates can watch the time. They'll also receive a signal that'll be held up 15 seconds before the end of the time to give the candidates fair warning. And of course, there's me, who will politely interrupt the candidates if needed should they go over their time allocation. Now I'm going to ask the candidates come out, and I'll introduce them.
You're going to miss that chair. You're really going to miss
I think I am. It's going to be a long ride home. It's 45 minutes. Thank you. Would you please be seated? To my left, in order, are Jim Johnson, Senator Raymond Lesniak, Ambassador Phil Murphy, and Assemblyman John Wisniewski. To keep everything on an equal basis, I'm going to call them by just their first and last names and do away with titles for the whole evening. As the drawing of lots went on, Phil Murphy will be the first to open, and he can give a 1-minute opening statement now. Thank you.
I am honored to be here at Stockton. All of our lives are books filled with many chapters. For me, among them, serving Barack Obama as an ambassador, serving on the board of the NAACP, chairing the board of a women's shelter. But the most important chapter for me is chapter 1. I was born into a family with a dad who did not get out of high school and a mom who did. We were working poor, but we were happy because we grew up in a different America, an America where you knew if you worked hard, you stayed in school, you stayed out of trouble, you could go all the way. That little kid today in a working poor family in New Jersey or in poverty or even in the middle class does not have that deal available to him or her. I want to be the governor that grows this economy again, makes it fair again, makes our society fair again, who invests in public education and higher education and infrastructure and health care, invests in our kids again. I'll be the governor who has their back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wisniewski.
For the past 2 years, this Democratic primary has been run a bit like an auction, except there's only one candidate who keeps bidding up the price. That's wrong, and it's got to change. For the fact of the matter is that this election should be about leadership. And leadership's not measured in words, it's measured in actions. As an assemblyman in 21 years, I provided leadership when I stood up against our first Goldman Sachs governor, John Corzine, when he wanted to sell the Parkway and the Turnpike. I saved jobs, and I prevented an 800% toll increase. As chair of the Transportation Committee, I stood up to Chris Christie when his team closed lanes on the George Washington Bridge, when few others were willing to stand up to him. And just last year, alone among Assembly Democrats, I voted no on an unconscionable $1 billion tax cut for the wealthiest New Jerseyans, a tax cut that Phil was silent on. This election is about proven leadership. That's why governor is not an entry-level position.
Thank you. Please hold your applause. Please. Jim Johnson.
On June 6th, gentlemen, thanks. On June 6th, Democratic primary voters have a choice. They can go with the old playbook, which will get them a former owner of Goldman Sachs. It'll get them someone who jumped in line with the party machine, and it'll get them more of the same. Or they can join me. I'm running for change. I know the struggles of the people in this state. The machines have failed us. They've tanked our economy. I grew up here. Service is in my bones. And as governor, I would bring the skills that I had when I led Treasury enforcement, when I fought for voting rights, when I fought for affordable housing. I will fight for the families of this state, and I will help us move forward because New Jersey is not for sale.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lesniak.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to tell you why you should entrust me to be the next governor of the state of New Jersey. I've been in public service almost my entire life after serving in the United States Army and completing my education with the help of the GI Bill. My passion comes from my humble beginnings. My dad had to quit school after the 8th grade to work to help support his family who emigrated to the U.S. from Poland. As a senator, I expanded drug courts to deal with the opioid crisis, ended mass incarceration in New Jersey, fought for marriage equality, won a landmark women's right to choose case and an International Human Rights Award, and passed the most important environmental protection laws in the country. And now I'm taking on Exxon to make them pay for contaminating our state. New Jersey needs a governor who has the experience and track record to chart a better course for the people of our state. I'm on your side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the first question now. Mr. Murphy goes first with a 2-minute response, and then we'll go around with the rebuttal. And the question is, New Jersey's unemployment rate continues to be above the national average. What would you do to stimulate jobs?
Not only is our unemployment rate above the national average, but we are, objectively speaking, among the weakest economies in the country. We've been downgraded 11 straight times by the rating agencies. We lead the nation in home foreclosures. The last year on record was an all-time increase in household income in America, and we finished 50 out of 50. So the state of our state is in crisis. We need, as I say in every room, if we don't get the economy right, we don't get New Jersey right. And that means both growing the economy and making it fair again. And both of those initiatives will push back on unemployment. We grow the economy by re-embracing a couple of the engines that we used to rely on. The STEM, or innovation economy. We were Silicon Valley before there was a Silicon Valley. And the infrastructure economy, taking complete advantage of our God-given location. But just as importantly, we have to be fair again. We need a state that has a minimum wage of $15. A state that has earned sick leave, not just for some, but for all. Equal pay for equal work. College affordability. Plans that we can help our kids deal with an extraordinary debt burden from going to college. A child dependent care tax credit. I'm a big believer in a notion called the public bank, a bank that we would all own as citizens, that would do all of its business in New Jersey. Student loans at better rates, small business loans, working with community banks, small scale infrastructure loans in communities, all of which would contribute to not only a fairer economic New Jersey, but one that grows and one that creates jobs like we used to create in this state. We were a national economic model. We're no longer. We have to get back to that place.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wisniewski.
Well, we have to grow our economy by investing in transportation and investing in education. But we also have to stop the mistakes that have happened in the past, where our state government has gone for the shiny, attractive object that hasn't worked out. A state bank for New Jersey would be a disaster. If Mr. Murphy wants to create a state bank, maybe he should go back to Wall Street. But the fact of the matter is that the one state bank that exists in the United States, in North Dakota, has said that no other state should try it, because North Dakota has oil and gas revenue that they use to underwrite their state bank, and we don't. A state bank would put New Jersey taxpayers on the hook. We've done such a good job at managing our pensions. We've done a good job at managing our transportation system. We've done a good job at managing education. Of course, it's logical to assume that this time we'll do a good job running a state bank. I don't buy it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson.
We can't fix our problems in the state with the same minds that gave us the problems in the first place. We're not where we need to be compared to New York, Pennsylvania, or anyone else, anywhere else, because the leadership has failed us, has not focused on the needs of the state. The insiders in Trenton have taken care of themselves, but not taken care of the people of the state, which is why our infrastructure is failing, which is why after the tunnel was canceled by Governor Christie, the insiders, Democrats and Republicans, decided nevertheless they were going to endorse him for a second term. And we can't We cannot adopt Wall Street gimmicks to fix Main Street problems. The state bank that's been proposed will be put in the hands of the same people that have been driving this state into a ditch year after year after year, and that has to change.
Thank you. Mr. Lesniak.
Sure. I would improve our economy by my New Jersey Grow Healthy plan, by killing the 4 pipelines that are proposed for New Jersey that will make us fossil
Please
fuel
hold your
free for the next century. My plan is to make New Jersey fossil fuel free by 2050 by investing those billions of dollars in those pipelines in solar, wind, and energy efficiency, and in mass transit as well. That will improve our economy, affect climate change, create lots of high-tech jobs, not the construction jobs with the pipelines that come and go. So by New Jersey, by growing our economy in a healthy way, we will stop the potential for climate change impacting the state of New Jersey in a devastating way and create jobs at the same time.
Thank you very much. And now for the next question, we will start with Mr. Wisniewski, and we will continue around this way.
Sure.
Democrats worked with Governor Christie to impose a 2% cap on local spending. What more would you do regarding property taxes, or do you think their growth has been effectively controlled?
Well, the growth of property taxes has not been effectively controlled, and the efforts by the current governor have missed the mark by a wide margin. We have a couple of root causes of our property tax crisis in New Jersey. First of all, let's not forget that when the state of New Jersey is not funding its fair share of education, local property taxpayers make up the difference. In the current budget, $1.5 billion is missing in the School Funding Reform Act. Over the past 7 years, nearly $8 billion underfunded in our education system, which directly relates to increasing property taxes. As governor, I would make sure that we are fully funding our School Funding Reform Act, number one. There's been talk by the current governor and a challenge to the legislature to rewrite the funding formula in the next 100 days. It would be a disaster and a mistake to allow a governor walking out the door
Thank you.
to set the terms.
I'm sorry, you had 2 minutes. It's
That's
me.
what I thought.
Yes.
Okay. To set the terms for the next governor. On top of that, we have to recognize that education is one of the most fundamental investments we can make in New Jersey. When corporate leaders choose to come to New Jersey, they come to New Jersey because we've got a good location, but also because we have a well-educated workforce, that we have good public schools. And we need to make sure we're continuing to invest in our good public schools by doing a couple of things that haven't been done in a couple of years, like telling our teachers that we appreciate the work they're doing, by making sure their retirement security is actually secure, and by making sure that when they get out of high school, we have a system of free public colleges and universities that our young men and women can go to so they can further their education.
Thank you. This time your time is really up. I appreciate that. Mr. Johnson, your next 1 minute.
Not only are property taxes too high, so the 2% cap has been a failure, but we are at the highest level of foreclosures in the nation. These two things are linked. I have put forward a proposal to limit property taxes that's free of gimmicks, but it targets the fact that commercial property and residential property are linked and move up or down together. We need to change that. It targets the fact that with more than 565 jurisdictions, we pay too much for too little government. And I am a proponent of, I've been arguing for aggressive formation of shared services agreements. And of course, we need to fully fund our school funding formula. And the reason for that is, first, it is the right thing to do for our students, and secondly, it will lift the burden of our property owners all across the state. It is too high. We can end it if we have the will, and we have folks in Trenton who are actually concerned about the needs of all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Lesniak.
Sure. Well, we have to wean us off of property taxes to fund education. We have an educational funding formula that was adopted in 2007. Can you imagine the administrative improvements that have been made by technology since in the last 10 years? We can save money by having a controller of education that will look at school spending and not allow truant officers for 4-year-olds like we have, or custodians of education who are supervisors and only supervising themselves. We have to be progressive Democrats who also look after the tax dollars of our people. We have to make New Jersey affordable. And by making it affordable, we have to cut down the waste that goes out the window in administrative expenses and does not get into the classroom.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy.
Sharon, both of your questions on employment and property taxes get to a general point that must be made. This is a complete failure of leadership, a complete breakdown of leadership. And this has been a long time coming, and I don't think we should kid ourselves that we can turn this ship around overnight. But let's get back to doing some things that we know would give some property tax relief. Fully funding the school funding formula has been mentioned. Looking in earnest and incenting shared services across communities where there's real appetite. In particular, let's look out for our seniors and our low-income earners and the folks who have gone from the full-time economy into the gig economy, where that property tax is blind to their earnings reality. And lastly, we accept the static reality because that's what Governor Christie's given us. We need to grow this economy again, and there's no reason why we can't. I have to just add that I'm comforted the folks who are against the public bank are the folks running against me, and the bankers and the person who's for it is Bernie Sanders. That gives me great comfort.
Thank you. All right. The next question, please, and we'll start with Mr. Johnson on this question with a 2-minute response. We'll see if I can do this right. What, if anything, would you do to reduce the impact of climate change on New Jersey?
There is so much that we can do to impact climate change in the state of New Jersey, and I will go through a handful of things. First is a failure of will. I believe in climate change. It's weird to even have to say that, but given our governor and given our president, we need to make sure that we put science at the center of state policy, and I would appoint a chief science officer to make sure that science is at the table. Secondly, I would re-enter the regional greenhouse gas agreement. And third, I would invest in green technology. We're not far away from Atlantic City, where we did have the opportunity for the Fisherman's Energy Project that brings jobs. It decreases carbon emissions, and it's the sort of investment, an example of the sort of investment that the state should make but hasn't made. We used to be number 2 in solar. We're falling behind. We have opportunities to be equal or exceed what Rhode Island has done, New York has done, Maryland has done with wind power. We are failing. We're failing because there's a lack of agreement, a lack of intentional leadership. And that has to change. I would bring that change. But we need to do more than that because we have a president and a leadership in the EPA that wants to take us back and undo the progress that we were on our way towards. And so as governor, I would make sure that even as the EPA moves to lower its standards, we keep them high and we look to improve them. I would invest as well as we make infrastructure investments to make sure that there are charging stations for electric cars throughout the state. We can do this. We used to be a leader in innovation. We should be a leader, particularly as our economy changes and we want to be on the cutting edge of emerging technologies.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lesniak, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, New Jersey is at ground zero for climate change. A recent study said that within 50 years, 20% of the state of New Jersey can be underwater. And that's why my New Jersey Grow Healthy plan is so important. These 4 pipelines, the Pilgrim Pipeline, the Penn East Pipeline, the Pinelands Pipeline, there are 2 Pilgrim pipelines, will make us fossil fuel dependent for an entire century. By killing those pipelines and doing the solar and wind energy and investing in mass transit, we will help New Jersey fight climate change, and as governor, I will take that leadership to the National Governor's Council, across the world, because this is not just a New Jersey problem, it's a United States problem, it's an international problem, and New Jersey will lead the way.
Thank you very much. No, please hold. Mr. Murphy.
Like a lot of things, we used to be a national model, and under Governor Christie, we've lost our way. So we need to get back to the things that we know would fight back against climate change, rejoining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Collective, propelling solar energy forward, unleashing offshore wind. We think that there's the potential to generate 3,500 megawatts by the year 2030 in offshore wind. That would power 1.5 million homes in the state. A whole new mindset of the Board of Public Utilities in terms of how they view conservation and savings, embrace environmental justice and community solar programs so that inner cities get to benefit from this as well. As was mentioned also before, we're not only making up for lost time under Governor Christie, but we're going to have to battle back against a hostile federal administration, and it's a good example of many governors will have never mattered more.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wisniewski.
Thank you. For the past 7+ years, our current governor has systematically dismantled our environmental protections, whether it is underinvesting in our Department of Environmental Protection or eviscerating the Clean Energy Fund that is used to subsidize, or had been used to subsidize, clean energy installations. And so we've gone from number 2 in solar to number 7. So there are things we need to do. Obviously, get back into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, but expand that as a regional compact to promote the installation of alternative energy. We also need to make sure that we're reinvigorating the PACE program, the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program that was conditionally vetoed by Governor Christie. And finally, we need to make sure that we have scientists in the Department of Environmental Protection whose job it will be to protect our environment, and that we give them the resources they need to protect our environment.
Thank you very much. This next question, we will start with Mr. Lesniak with a 2-minute response. And we're going to ask you, and this was a question that came up from a lot of different people when we asked their questions on this. How would you prepare New Jersey high school students to be competitive in the high-tech global economy?
Well, first of all, we have to bring respect back to the teachers and into the classroom. The biggest mistake Governor Christie has made is to demonize our teachers. That gets down into the classroom, and these kids know it, and they see it, and it makes teaching more difficult. I've studied educational systems throughout the world. The two that pop out are Poland and Finland. Teachers are treated there as the professionals that they are, and they are allowed to teach. The state doesn't say, or the federal government doesn't say, you have to take this test, or you have to do this test. They decide how to learn. And by giving that respect back into the classroom, I think we will upgrade our educational system. Also, we have one of the best educational systems, but we have the biggest gap between the best and the worst schools. We have to start wraparound community schools for children in the most developmentally important years for education. And that's not pre-K, it's prenatal. We have to go into those low-income neighborhoods and help the mother when she's pregnant with nutritional advice and health advice, and that child with, again, nutritional advice and health advice and tutoring so that they're ready for pre-K. Right now, they're behind the 8 ball just to begin with, and that creates problems down the road. So by focusing on the most important aspects of learning in a child's ability to grasp the need for education, and by giving the teachers respect that they deserve and allowing them to teach and not forcing them state methods of testing that really shouldn't apply to anyone, that's how we're going to improve our education system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy.
So you start with the premise that one of the big economic opportunities for us is the innovation economy. It's an economy we used to dominate, and we need to dominate again if we're going to grow out of our crisis. You begin by funding public schools. As has been mentioned, we had a landmark, a national model school funding formula that Governor Christie's underfunded by over $8 billion. Let's get back to funding our public education. Secondly, I echo the statements by Senator Lesniak. Let's put our educators back up on a pedestal and find ways to incent them to be teaching these STEM-heavy courses. Thirdly, the presence of computer science AP courses in this state are shockingly thin, particularly participating by women. We need to find ways to get that to more of our students. Lastly, I was the United States ambassador in Germany. The Germans do that vocational technical thing really well. There are lessons I think we can pull from them and apply here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wisniewski.
Thank you. How to make our children more competitive starts really simply with making sure we're investing in our public schools, which we haven't done because we have a governor who doesn't believe in them. That's got to change. But we also need to make sure there's a future. I was down here at a forum at Stockton a number of months ago, and I ran into a student, and I asked her if she was thinking about becoming a teacher. And she said, no, I don't think there's much of a future in New Jersey for teachers based on what I see going on. We are losing our future when we are discouraging young men and women to become teachers. We need to make sure that they not only understand that the school system will be funded, but they will have retirement security. We need to make sure there's enough educational days so that we have to get rid of the PARCC test, which chews up 15 days every year. And finally, we need to make sure that we're giving them an opportunity at a competitive and good job when they come out of school by growing our economy.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson.
One of the beauties of campaigning is that you get a window in and a passport and an invitation into people's lives. And when you move into some of our cities like Trenton or in Newark, and you talk to the children, you get a very strong sense that they have the sense and their parents have the sense that they have been left behind. Starting with high school to try to make our young people competitive is too late. From kindergarten to third grade, children are learning to read, and afterwards they're reading to learn. So a program needs to do this. The governor needs to make sure science is important. We need to provide pre-K education, after-school programs. In Newark, there's a program called Tech World, phenomenal opportunity for young people to learn about science. It is a phenomenal thing that we actually can do if we make the investments at the right time. And to do that, we have to care deeply and see what those needs are and answer them.
Thank you very much. We are now back to Mr. Murphy for the 2-minute response. The question is, what is your actual plan to develop clean, renewable energy sources?
This is one we've touched on a bit, but we've put out a plan that envisions a 100% clean energy economy by the year 2050. I was proud to have been endorsed by and spoke to the National Convention of the League of Conservation Voters a couple of weeks ago, and their leadership said that if by putting this plan in place, we would set the bar nationally. And again, this is an area where we're not only digging out from the damage done by Governor Christie, which is considerable, but we're also going to have to push back against what's coming at us every single day from Washington, not just President Trump, but the Republican leadership in Congress, most of whom are climate change deniers. So elements of our plan are reigniting the solar industry in this state, an industry that used to be a national leader. And believe it or not, we lost 1,000 jobs in that industry last year, among the biggest losers in the country, at a time when the solar industry around the country is booming. Reigniting or igniting the offshore wind industry, an industry that we would have been first in the nation had Governor Christie signed his name to it. And of course, we've let Rhode Island get out ahead of us. As I mentioned earlier, we think we can get up to 3,500 megawatts by the year 2030. That's not that far from now, that could power 1.5 million homes. Rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Focus on environmental justice. I can't say that strongly enough. Too many folks think of a clean energy and a sustainable environment by viewing open fields and offshore wind, but we also have to remember our urban communities suffer disproportionately from the energy environment, the energy that we have today. So all of those components together, plus conservation, a board of public utilities that values conservation.
Thank you. Mr. Wisniewski.
In order to get to a 100% renewable clean energy standard by 2050, we have a lot of work that we have to undertake. So clearly we have to use the Clean Energy Fund for its intended purpose, reinvigorate the PACE program, but let's also not forget that something close to 50% of the emittents, the pollutants in our air, come from private passenger vehicles and vehicles on the road. We need to invest in our mass transit system so that we can get people out of their cars and onto trains and buses that they can actually rely upon. We also need to make sure that we are taking long-range steps, like banning fracking. We took a step here in New Jersey. The governor didn't like it, but we have threats coming along our borders from Pennsylvania and New York. And then finally, we need to make sure, as I said earlier, that our Department of Environmental Protection is staffed with professionals and scientists and is funded so they can do the job they were intended to do.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
We hold this state and this planet in trust, and we need to recognize that we're in the middle of a climate crisis. And the steps that ought to be taken include steps that have been outlined here, but a key component of that is our own personal responsibility. The government, the governor, needs to lead in terms of developing clean energy and working with industry to do that. But also there's an education component. I was born in 1960, and I remember as the environmental movement took off, there was a focus brought about by Silent Spring, which was a clarion cry for the danger to the environment. We now have that same sort of cry that we have to answer. So our education, our civic culture also needs to point towards dealing with the problem of greenhouse gases and the threat that we are under. And I would make those investments, and I would lead. Again, I would put science at the center of policy so that we can make a big change and make the difference.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lesniak.
So I established the first Superfund site in the nation in the state of New Jersey. And when Congressman Florio established the federal Superfund site, the petrochemical industry said, we don't have to pay Lesniak's surcharge because we're preempted. I took him to court, Lesniak versus United States, and I got them to pay. And now I'm in court to overturn Christie's $225 million settlement of a $9.2 billion damage claim against ExxonMobil. And it's worse. The giveaways that Christie gave to ExxonMobil allow ExxonMobil to be released from liability for over $1 billion. I'm going to take that case and win it as well. I agree with John, we have to adopt the California emission standards, and we certainly have to invest in mass transit, and by that way, we'll have an economy that's clean and that's healthy.
Thank you.
For our citizens.
Thank you. So we're going to stay with the environment for a little bit longer, and we're going to start with Mr. Wisniewski on this one.
Sure.
For 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
And the question is, clean drinking water is crucial to New Jersey's economic future and to the health of our families. What are your plans to protect drinking water sources in the Highlands and in the Pinelands?
Drinking water is the essence of life, and if we don't protect it, we will be at a very big disadvantage. So we've seen some very horrible things happen. Governor Christie re-engineered, literally, the membership of the Pinelands Commission so that he could get a natural gas pipeline through the Pinelands. One of the largest reservoirs of drinking water in the state of New Jersey is now potentially contaminated. And we see incursions for Penn East and Pilgrim Pipeline, and we need to be pushing back very hard on those pipelines because we see the damage that they can do to our drinking water. But more than just that, we need to make sure that we are setting aside the funds necessary to continue to buy the open space to protect our drinking water sources. While we've done a good job in the past, under this administration, we've again backslid, and we need to have a governor that understands the importance of buying open space to protect our drinking water. And finally, we can't underscore enough the dangers that fracking presents to drinking water, and we need...
I did it again, didn't I?
I'm starting to feel this is
personal. I feel a little bit strange about this. Keep going. Keep going.
And I was on a roll. I'm sorry. we have to recognize the dangers that fracking presents to our drinking water. We have now a moratorium on fracking in the Delaware River Basin. There are neighboring governors that would like to change that. We need to make sure that we have a governor that's not only in favor of a moratorium, that's in favor of a ban. We've seen far too many times where fracking has polluted groundwater and has only benefited big corporations. My goal as governor is to make sure that we are protecting our drinking water and that we are banning fracking and that we are investing in our environment so that our future generations have clean water to drink.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, 1 minute.
I would focus from not only from the source to the faucet in terms of protecting our water. We have seen trouble within our cities, both within New Jersey but across the nation. Flint is a nightmare that shouldn't be here, and the governor should be, and I would be focused from the source to the faucet. More than 15 school districts have lead in their water in this state, and kids are drinking water from plastic bottles rather than just being able to go to the water fountain. So my ethics proposal would help part of the problem. I would make sure that our water commissions actually have people that know science and are expert in these areas and are acting with a public purpose in mind. Secondly, I would focus on new technologies to remove lead from the water and make sure that our environmental standards reflect new knowledge and the new materials that we've been putting in our water and in our environment that has to be cleaned out.
And now Mr. Lesniak, please.
So it won't surprise you to learn that I sponsored the first Safe Drinking Water Act in the country to test for hydrocarbons. And along with that, established the Drinking Water Quality Institute, an institute of scientists to bring up to date, as science advances, the contaminations that should be tested for and eliminated from our water supply. Since Governor Christie has been in office, the Drinking Water Quality Institute has recommended 12 chemicals to be tested for. And guess how many Governor Christie has adopted? 0. So I have been the leader in protecting our water supply. Indeed, I was the floor general in the Assembly when Governor Byrne passed the Pinelands Protection Act. So my entire career has been focused on clean water, clean energy, and a clean economy, and a clean New Jersey for all of us to live in.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy, please.
Just start as a sort of a backdrop. We are the densest state in the nation. We're the 4th smallest geographically. We used to have a state plan in New Jersey. We used to have a master energy plan. We used to have a master water plan. Under this governor, we have none of the above. We have 2 extraordinary entities in the Pinelands and the Highlands, almost unique, at least on the East Coast, if not in the country. The Highlands, I think alone accounts for water for around upwards of 5 million of our 9 million residents. As has already been mentioned, we cannot have the referee in the tank for one of the teams. The oversight of both of these entities have been politicized. We must get back to the fair and balanced oversight that is consistent with the initial intention of each of these commissions, and that must be a matter of highest priority.
Thank you. For the next question, this comes from a Stockton staff person. We're going to start with Mr. Johnson. I'm going to try not to cut him off and see if we can do this right. The state pension fund has been raided by both Democrat and Republican governors, creating a huge shortfall. What would you do to make the pension system whole, and can New Jersey taxpayers afford it?
In my opening statement, I talked about the fact that our government at the top levels has not served the people, and the pension crisis is a key example of that. Democratic and Republican leaders have acted without care for people who have kept their promises, have done their jobs, and have made their payments into the system. That is wrong. And as governor, I'd be prepared. I say that now, and I say that as a person who almost lost a family home because someone made a promise to my family and didn't keep it. And I know I've spoken to people who are relying on pensions, that is a real concern. And I've heard from people who are worried about not being able to retire when they want to retire. So what would we do? We need to get the math right. Our overall budget situation is a mess, and we need to consider raising the estate taxes to make sure that we're adding more revenue. We need to make sure that we are making the payments that we're committed to, but taking a hard look as we have new employees coming on as to whether or not we can afford to make the same pension payments going forward. These are crucial issues, and we can't fail. What I wouldn't do is go in and ask for even more sacrifices from those who have currently paid into the system and are relying on that for their retirement. That's something that's untenable. I would open up the budgeting process so we see where all of the money goes. It has worked in places like Massachusetts, where we know what the budget assumptions are. They do. They have third parties that validate the budget assumptions, and you don't end up at the end of a year the way we seem to do in New Jersey, which is, oops, we don't have the money. That is unfair, it's not right, and as governor, I would not permit it. We should see where the money is going, we should protect those who have been serving us, and we should keep our promises, and I intend to do that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lesniak, please.
Well, thank you. Certainly no employee, public or private, should have to worry about the integrity of their pensions. I voted against Chapter 78, which made public employees pay more, but allow the state to skip out of its obligations to fully fund the pension. So that obviously has to be a first priority of us. I would bring back the millionaire's tax. We had a millionaire's tax. Our economy was in great shape. There's no reason why we can't have that again. That would bring $1.2 billion back into the system. I also have legislation to close corporate tax loopholes. 40 other states have the same legislation. This legislation would prevent international and interstate companies from moving income generated in New Jersey offshore. That's another $300 million. That will be enough money plus reforms in the budget to secure the pension payments for all of the public employees in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy, please.
We used to be a state that was respected and trusted, and no one knows better than public sector employees that we're no longer trusted. They know it. Rating agencies that have downgraded us 11 straight times know it. Businesses know it. Our kids leave this state in record numbers to go to college and to leave after college. We must stand up for the obligations that the state has agreed to. No more welching on those obligations. And we have to find the money. We have to become a state again that people trust. Whether it's the millionaire's tax, closing corporate loopholes, closing this ridiculous carried interest Wall Street loophole, closing the out-of-network health care loophole, which costs individuals and the state a lot of money, getting hedge funds out of the business of managing our pension assets. They charge an arm and a leg. They return nothing at best. Legalization of marijuana, by the way, is a big potential money spinner. We have to find the money. This is a question of trust.
Thank you. Mr. Wisniewski.
1 minute this time.
1 minute, I promise.
All right. So I was in the Assembly in 1996 when Governor Whitman gave a budget address and announced that because our state pensions were funded at 103%, that it would be wrong for the state to continue to fund them. And 20 years later, look at where we're at. The fact of the matter is that public employees have made their contribution every 2 weeks, and the state of New Jersey has welched on its deal. And the state of New Jersey needs to stand up behind its promises. A promise made is a promise kept. But let's talk about where the money comes from. We need to look at the millionaire's tax. That's $1.1 billion. We cut the sales tax 1/8 of a cent. I know you're all very, saving up those eighths of a penny every day. But that's $600 million hit on the budget. We need to look at legalizing marijuana, closing corporate loopholes. That's another $600 million. We have the money that we can raise to make sure we're meeting our obligations and funding our public education that we have an obligation to do. And as governor, I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you very much. And now the next question, we start with Mr. Lesniak, and I'll try and remember to give you a full 2 minutes here if we can do this. What potential problems do you see if New Jersey was to legalize recreational marijuana use and expand medical marijuana use?
interesting because I struggled with this question for quite a while until recently. I have founded the only public recovery high school for children with substance use disorder. And it was very difficult for me to come out in favor of legalized marijuana. But I looked at the Canada report. Canada is going to allow legalization of marijuana in 2018. And they're going to have protections in there so that children aren't exposed to it. There's advertising, there's treatment, and there's an infrastructure in place so that it doesn't be exposed to the youth who we certainly want to keep it away from. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm receiving an award from Rutgers University, Champion of Recovery. We have these children who relapse, who go to rehabilitation, go back to their original schools and get offered drugs and alcohol the very next day. The school that I founded gives them a safe haven. As a matter of fact, our first graduate finished her first year at Rutgers University, my alma mater. So I'm very proud of that. Legalized marijuana is not the solution to our economic problem. There's a great infrastructure that has to be in place, but I am in favor of it. We have to do it right. We have to make sure that we have testing for driving under the influence, which we do not. And we have to do it to ensure that candies and other inducements and advertising for children do not increase their likelihood of using it. But now I can say affirmatively that by 2018, we will have legalized marijuana in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy.
I too support legalization and expansion of medical marijuana, and it also wasn't easy for me. This is a state, and in this county is one of many that are undergoing an enormous crisis in opioid addiction. You have to look long and hard at that and figure out what the root causes are, and I'm not a medical doctor, so I rely on the input of others. I'm also the dad of 4 teenagers, one of whom's in the front row, so this is not something I got to overnight. But I believe, based on all of the input and all of the conversations I've had, that this is the right step. And if anything, there's a fair and growing amount of research that suggests that it actually, contrary to being a gateway drug, can be a weapon in the opioid pushback. The economic reason is the very last reason we should be doing this, but it is worth noting that it is a potential, a big economic potential, including crop matter in a lot of the agricultural counties in this state. I'm also glad we didn't go first.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wisniewski.
We need to legalize marijuana, we need to create a market for it, and we need to liberalize our medical marijuana laws, but we also need to do it for another reason. Our failed war on drugs is not working. We see far too many lives disrupted and ruined because of essentially social crimes, where they wind up with records, they're not able to apply for student loans, they're not able to get good jobs. I would make sure that while we're legalizing marijuana, we're also providing pardons and amnesty to those people who are suffering those sentences so they can get on with their lives. It's not only going to help us raise money, which we should never turn our back on, but we're also going to redirect our police resources so that they can be confronting real issues as opposed to social issues like the use of marijuana.
Thank you. Now, please hold. Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
We should, this is an issue that I may not have struggled with as much as others, but I've thought a lot about. I had a long career in law enforcement, and I oversaw the Customs Service, which was very much focused on stopping drugs from coming into the country. What we started to recognize was a failed war on drugs. With respect to addiction, we need to bring compassion, the same compassion that we're bringing to people who are suffering from opioid addiction. We need to focus as well on the inner cities. We turned a blind eye to the issues of interdiction and only brought law enforcement as a tool to deal with the problems of drug use, drug sales, drug addiction in our cities. We need to recognize that our crimes ought to, the things that we charge ought to be consistent with the views of the time. We've advanced on marijuana. We need to focus on the fact that enforcement has a disproportionate impact in our urban communities, on our minorities, on our people of color, and that needs to change.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go on to a new question now, and we're going to be starting with Mr. Murphy. And the question is, from our Stockton Polling Institute, our polls show consistently that New Jersey voters want compromise to resolve issues instead of partisanship and bickering. How would you work with the other party to move forward on issues?
Amen. We've had 7.5 years of a governor who's been an us versus them governor, a zero-sum governor. If I get something, it's at your expense, and a failure to recognize that there actually are win-win-wins, that all boats can rise, that we can find common ground. I used to marvel at the fact that Orrin Hatch and the late Teddy Kennedy, one of my heroes, probably didn't agree on 95% of their respective agendas. But on the 5% where they did agree, they dominated, and it was for the benefit of the American people. And if this weren't bad enough in terms of the toxic environment, we've now got an us versus them president who's adding to this sort of notion. So I think it behooves all of us, and certainly it behooves the next governor of the state of New Jersey, to make sure he or she is the governor for the entire state, for all 21 counties, for all 9 million of us. Regardless of our party, regardless of our status, and that's probably, frankly, more important. I think when you've got a state, and again, let's frame this and recognize that this is a state in crisis that is a victim of failed special interest politics led by Governor Christie and now being aided and abetted by Donald Trump. The big issue for us is the economy, both growing it again and making it fair again. And most of the growth initiatives and fairness initiatives, in my judgment, are initiatives that can garner bipartisan support. More jobs, better jobs, stronger, safer communities, investing in our infrastructure, our rail infrastructure. Those should be appealing across all party lines, and I think that's the job of the next governor of this state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wisniewski.
Bipartisanship is an essential part of being able to get an agenda through Trenton. One of the things that I bring to my candidacy for governor is 21 years of experience working across the aisle in Trenton, having an opportunity to work with members of both sides and both parties to understand the issues that are important to them. Because a legislator from District 1 has a lot of different issues than a legislator from District 40. And if you serve with them and you understand those differences, it makes you a better leader. But we also have to recognize that the political system in New Jersey really makes it hard for bipartisanship. When you have 21 county chairs who rule with an iron fist, who dictate to their legislative delegations how they will vote, bipartisanship takes a back seat, and that political system has to change.
Thank you. Please stop. Please hold it. We're almost there. You can all applaud later. Mr. Johnson.
I understand the spirit of the question, but in the age of Donald Trump, there are some times that we're just going to have to fight. And there are some issues that we're going to have to take a hard line on. Within this state, I do believe, and I have worked to bring people together. I was chair of the Advisory Committee on Police Standards that was helping to resolve issues about racial profiling by state troopers on the Turnpike and in Garden State. We brought together law enforcement and the civil rights community, ended up developing a report and legislation that was approved on a bipartisan basis by overwhelming numbers by the time we finished our work. How we did it, we did something unusual for people in the political process. We brought citizens in, and our current process keeps citizens out. We listened, which is also unusual, particularly for politicians, but I believe you don't get any smarter by talking. And we moved the ball forward. We opened up a process. It gave people confidence in the results. It wasn't resolved in the back room. It was involved in the public, and it was resolved together.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lesniak.
Sure. Well, I have a lot of Republican friends. But the deals that have been made by the Democrats and Republicans over the 8 years have been bad for the taxpayers of the state. I stopped a political deal with the Democratic leadership and Governor Christie to politicize the Rutgers Board of Governors. There's a deal to give Christie a book deal to make millions of dollars in exchange for additional money for our legislative leadership. I stopped that. On Monday, there's another deal I'm going to stop. I'm going to go in court to get a temporary restraining order to stop this now $500 to $700 million State House renovation that started at $38 million. We can't afford a $500 million renovation for the State House. There's also a pork panel in this Transportation Trust Fund that's a deal with the leadership so that not the important projects don't get funded, but the political projects do. So I work with Republicans, but when Democrats and Republicans make bad deals, I'll stand up and fight them.
Thank you very much. This will be your last question before we go to a close. And I'm going to start with Mr. Wisniewski, and I promise to give him 2 minutes.
Okay.
What is your position on oil drilling off the Atlantic coast, and why do you feel that way?
Oil drilling off the Atlantic coast is a horrible idea, and as governor, I would work very hard to make sure that never happens. The governor of the state of New Jersey has to be an advocate for our environment, and the idea, just the mere idea, of there being oil drilling that would ruin our Atlantic coastline, that would hurt our economy and kill tourism, is something that everybody has to fight against. But let's not forget that we have to address the fossil fuel economy in order to actually have success at any of this. And when we look at the track record of the current administration, we know there's so much more that has to be done. We have to, as I said earlier, we have to reinvest in our mass transportation system to make sure that we get people out of their cars and onto trains and buses. And as I said before, that they actually show up on time, which means we have to have real leadership at New Jersey Transit and not micromanagement from the governor's office. We need to have real investment in our transportation infrastructure, not what we've had now, where a predominance of the money goes to roads and not to rails and buses. We need to change that. We need to make sure, for example, that we're getting a Port Authority bus terminal built, because having a bus terminal that takes 10 years to get halfway done is not acceptable to anybody who goes to work every day. And we need to change the horrible relationship we have at Penn Station in New York, where Amtrak controls it and dictates the New Jersey Transit, and we see so many people. I talked to one woman. Her commute used to be 2.5 hours. Now, on a bad day, it's 6 hours. That's bad for our state and bad for our economy, and that's because we've had an administration that doesn't appreciate the importance of our transportation infrastructure. And as governor, I am a transportation guy. I will be the transportation governor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson.
You know, I have known since I was a young child running away from Mr. Peanut on the boardwalk that the Jersey Shore is one of our state's great assets, and I would fight as governor to protect it and protect it for not just this generation, for future generations, which means that my Attorney General would be armed and fully authorized to fight this in the courts. I would be working with with the congressional delegation as well to fight federal efforts to open up offshore drilling off the coast of our great state. It's something that we have to do and we have to protect. And one of the things that we're at great danger if we don't change the way insider deals are cut is that we, the people, won't be involved in that process. And the same sort of mindset that shut down Fisherman's Energy will open up the coast to offshore drilling, and we will all be hurt for generations because of it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lesniak, please.
Well, certainly any candidate for public office who supports oil drilling off Atlantic coast should get his or her head examined. So, to improve mass transit and get us off of fossil fuel, I would put citizen representatives on the Port Authority and on New Jersey Transit. Representatives who come from advocates, not who come from me as governor or any senator, but from commuter advocates, to be watchdogs on the Port Authority and the New Jersey Transit so that they can make a motion and have a second and put on the record any vote that comes down so we can see all the billions of dollars that's being wasted by those companies, bring public into government, give the public a voice and a vote in government, and we'll see the right policies being adopted by this state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy?
Offshore drilling is wrong at every single level you could consider. Let's embrace offshore wind and turn our back on offshore drilling. And by the way, when you can create 3,500 megawatts of energy in the next 13 years and create a lot of really good, high-paying union jobs in doing so, it's a win-win-win. And you do protect that gem, that precious asset of the Jersey Shore. And the last time we let the governor take control of a program as it relates to our shore, it was the recovery from Sandy. And we all know how that worked out. We haven't gotten our share of federal funds. Too many folks are still not back in their homes. There's been fraud, lack of transparency. So let's embrace a clean energy economy. Let's do it together. Let's invest in rail infrastructure along the way. But let's embrace offshore wind and not drilling.
Thank you very much. We are now going to have the 1-minute close. We start with Mr. Murphy.
Again.
Yes.
I've been honored, Sharon, to be here at Stockton tonight with these gentlemen. We've had some, I think, significant agreement, and we've had some disagreements. One thing we know we can agree on, there will be a new governor of the state of New Jersey in January of 2018. And we have to get this exactly right. We need a governor with the right temperament, skills, experience, life story, someone who doesn't have an abstract sense of what it's like to be hanging in the middle class by their fingertips, but who has lived that. A governor who will grow our economy and make it fair again. And importantly, and as importantly, make our society fair again. And get us back to standing for the things we used to stand for, funding Planned Parenthood, signing sensible gun safety laws, accepting the reality of climate change and doing something about it. I humbly ask for your support on June 6th. I will be a governor who has your back.
Thank you. Mr. Wisniewski.
Sharon, thank you, and thank the Stockton University and the Hughes Center for organizing this tonight. In 28 days, the people of the state of New Jersey are going to pick one of us to be the Democratic nominee for governor. That's a job that falls to all of you, to make a decision about where New Jersey's future best lies. Do we need to have a repeat of our practices of the past, or do we need to move into new territory? Because we know the challenges that face us are enormous. Funding education, making sure that literally the trains and buses run on time, protecting our environment, and growing our economy. But we've seen too often that the reasons we haven't been able to succeed is because of the typical Trenton transactional politics that holds us back. I've got a 21-year record of standing up to the special interests and the party bosses. I'm here tonight to ask for your vote. Some say the things we're talking about are impossible, but I believe with the right kind of leadership, nothing is impossible.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Johnson, hold off, please.
I want to ask everybody one question. If we continue to play by the same old playbook written by the same insiders, do you think your lives will be any better? I don't think the answer is yes. And that's why I'm running for real change. The old playbook got us the highest property taxes in the nation, the highest rate of foreclosures. It got us John Corzine. It got us Chris Christie. It got us Chris Christie again. And if we don't stand up and open up this process to all of us, it will get us Phil Murphy. That is not the change that we are going to bring to this state.
Wait.
What we need is real democracy and real change. That is the only way. That is the only way that we will get a government and a governor for all of us and not for the insiders.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Lesniak, please.
What we need is Ray Lesniak for governor.
Please hold off. Please.
So I have been a fighter. I'm a champion. I've taken on all challenges. I've taken on the petrochemical industry and defeated them. I've taken on marriage equality when we only had 13 of 24 Democrats to support it. I've reduced our prison population by 50% for drug offenders. I eliminated the death penalty and replaced it with life without parole because innocent people were being murdered and minorities were being executed at a much higher percentage than anyone else. So I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, and I'll always fight for you, and that's why I should be the next governor of the state of New Jersey.
And now, if you would you give everyone an applause? Thank you, gentlemen.